What if a cartoon has been hinting at our future all along? For years, The Simpsons has joked about science, politics, technology, and world events, and more than a few of those jokes ended up happening for real. But the predictions that haven't happened yet are gaining the most attention, especially as we get closer to 2026. Today we're looking at 10 predictions from the show that could realistically happen by 2026. So let's start with our first prediction, colonizing Mars. Out of all the strange possibilities The Simpsons has ever tossed at viewers, one of the most unexpectedly believable is the idea that humanity could be living on Mars sooner than we think. In the 2016 episode, The Margian Chronicles, the show takes a comedic but surprisingly grounded look at a private company offering ordinary people a chance to become the first settlers on the Red Planet.
We're preparing to launch the first privately funded manned mission to Mars.
The year they choose for this giant leap, 2026. In the episode, the company Exploration Incorporated promises to build the first Martian colony and begin transporting volunteers within a decade. Lisa, ever curious and hopeful about science, immediately signs up. The rest of the family follows, each for their own quirky reasons. Of course, everything spirals into chaos the way only Springfield can manage. The mission derails, the plans fall apart, and no one ends up leaving Earth. Yet the final gag shows a future where Lisa and Marge are living on Mars in the year 2051, hinting that humanity eventually pulls it off. But here's where things get interesting. While the fictional company is obviously parodying the real-life Mars One project, which has since collapsed, the idea behind it hasn't gone anywhere. In fact, it's more alive now than when the episode aired. SpaceX has repeatedly stated that the first human landing on Mars could happen before the end of the decade, with early cargo missions even sooner. NASA is developing new propulsion systems, long-duration life support tech, and plans for a permanent base that might take shape in the 2030s. Countries that weren't even in the space race years ago are now launching probes, satellites, and long-term research initiatives aimed at Mars exploration. So could 2026 realistically be the year humans begin the first stage of colonizing Mars? Maybe not with families signing up through a TV commercial like in The Simpsons, but we're closer than ever to crewed missions actually being scheduled, funded, and tested. If a spacecraft filled with astronauts finally starts its journey toward Mars in the next few years, this would go down as one of the boldest Simpsons predictions to brush up against reality, something that once felt like a punchline but now feels like a countdown. If a mission to Mars becomes a real project by 2026, it would show how fast the world can change. And that same sense of unpredictability sets up our next prediction. Number 9. Mexico vs. Portugal World Cup Final. Back in 1997, The Simpsons aired an episode called The Cartridge Family, centered around Springfield preparing for a big football match. The writers used the setup mostly to poke fun at how Americans misunderstand the sport.
Come on, you schnorrers! Do something!
But they also slipped in a tiny background detail that fans still obsess over today. A TV commercial announces a showdown between Mexico and Portugal, hyping it as the match that will decide the greatest nation on Earth. The implication? It's being treated like a World Cup final, even though neither team had ever made it that far. At the time, it was pure satire, a quick joke almost buried in the noise. But as the years passed, this random pairing transformed into one of those eerie Simpsons predictions that people claim could still come true. So far, reality hasn't lined up with the joke. Mexico, despite decades of strong performances, has never advanced past the quarterfinals. Portugal has produced legends like Luis Figo and Cristiano Ronaldo, and even won the Euros, but still hasn't reached a World Cup final either. The closest the two nations ever came to a high-stakes showdown was their third-place playoff at the 2017 Confederations Cup, a match that hinted at what a true final between them might look like. What makes this prediction suddenly interesting is the fact that the 2026 FIFA World Cup is being co-hosted by Mexico itself. They'll have home field energy, record-breaking crowds, and more teams advancing thanks to the expanded tournament format. Portugal, meanwhile, continues to produce a conveyor belt of rising stars who could carry them to a historic run. On paper, the pairing still feels unlikely. Mexico struggles with knockout round pressure, and Portugal tends to fall short during deep tournament runs. But World Cups are built on shocking upsets, underdog streaks, and wild storylines no one predicts until they happen. If there was ever a tournament where a Simpsons joke could become a headline, it's the massive, chaotic, globe-spanning World Cup arriving in 2026. Imagine the scenes. A packed stadium in Mexico City, fans chanting in 2 languages, the world watching as an old cartoon gag suddenly becomes a bizarre piece of football folklore. If the ball bounces the right way, and if football's unpredictable chaos works its magic, this strange Simpsons pairing might finally step off the TV screen and onto the pitch. Football isn't the only thing that evolves with time. Even the way we speak shifts faster than we expect, which brings us to prediction number 8, goodbye disappearing. In the 2000 episode Bart to the Future, the show takes a playful look at what adult life might hold for Bart and Lisa. The story is filled with over-the-top comedy, failed ambitions, and exaggerated versions of the characters we know. But hidden inside all the jokes is one strangely thoughtful detail: the suggestion that, in the future, people no longer say goodbye. Instead, Nelson, still the same bully, only older, ends a hologram message with his trademark line, "Smell you later."
But I can only pay you in popcorn shrimp. Smell you later!
Bart casually points out that this phrase has replaced the traditional farewell altogether.
I can't believe smell you later replaced goodbye.
Smell you later!
Smell you later.
It's a small throwaway gag, but it taps into something very real about how fast language shifts. Words come and go constantly. The English spoken today barely resembles the English spoken even 50 years ago. Entire generations now communicate through abbreviations, emojis, voice notes, and internet-created expressions that older adults struggle to decode.
Yes, I'm finna get a PC got. Mine's high-key sus. It's literally slower than a boomer, and the lag is deadass so cringe.
Think about how quickly terms like riz, yeet, bet, no cap, or sus took over everyday speech, classrooms, and online culture. They weren't just slang, they became part of how people actually communicate. So the idea that a centuries-old phrase like goodbye could fade out isn't as outrageous as it sounds. Goodbye originated from the phrase, God be with ye, yet most people don't think about that meaning at all. If the word once evolved from a religious blessing into a casual farewell, why couldn't it evolve again into something totally different? Maybe even something silly, catchy, or meme-like. A single phrase can become worldwide within days if a creator, influencer, or viral moment gives it enough momentum.
Is this Smoking Squad?
Gang, gang.
Doctor, please tell us what's up with our bestie.
Imagine a popular TikTok trend, a breakout TV show, or a digital personality unintentionally creating the next universal farewell. It wouldn't even need to be "smell you later." It could be quick, punchy, humorous, or ironic, something that feels fun to say and easy to share. Younger generations already prefer casual send-offs like later, peace, catch you, I'm out, or even just an emoji. If a new phrase becomes widespread enough, the old one naturally fades without anyone noticing. In that sense, The Simpsons wasn't predicting a specific catchphrase. It was hinting at how fragile language actually is. Something we take for granted today could be replaced tomorrow, not because someone plans it, but because culture shifts under our feet. So while "smell you later" probably won't become the official replacement, the idea behind the joke is surprisingly believable. By 2026, it wouldn't be shocking if goodbye already feels outdated in certain circles, replaced by something shorter, funnier, and built for a fast-moving digital world. As language keeps changing, so do ideas about culture and discipline. That leads us into prediction number 7, Australia's unusual punishment. In the 1995 episode Bart vs. Australia, the writers take one of the show's most chaotic international detours. What starts as a simple question about how water drains in different hemispheres spirals into a global dispute.
Hello, Southern Hemisphere? Which way does the water go in your toilet?
Just a minute, I'll check.
Angry phone calls, political tension, and, of course, Bart accidentally insulting an entire country. Because of the outrage he causes, the Simpson family is forced to travel to Australia, where Bart faces an unusual punishment: a public boot to the backside delivered by an official in front of a crowd. The whole scene is over the top, cartoonish, and intentionally ridiculous. The idea that a government would ever create a legal punishment involving a giant shoe wind-up machine is obviously made for laughs. But what makes this prediction interesting isn't the literal gag, it's the underlying question. Could certain countries rethink how they discipline young offenders in the future? While Australia doesn't allow corporal punishment in courts, parents are legally permitted to use reasonable force in a private setting when disciplining their own children. That contrast creates a strange gray area. Add to that the constant debates happening worldwide about youth crime, juvenile behavior, and whether strict consequences actually help or harm young people. And suddenly this old Simpsons joke starts to look like commentary rather than nonsense. Politicians often float dramatic punishment ideas, not because they'll be passed into law, but because they spark conversations. People argue, laugh, get upset, or demand reform, but the topic refuses to disappear. By 2026, we'll likely see even more disputes about how societies should handle young offenders, whether through rehabilitation, tough sentences, community service, education programs, or controversial, deterrent methods that stir public debate. While a literal booting machine will never appear in a courtroom, the idea behind it, society swinging between strict punishment and compassion, remains incredibly relevant. That's what makes this prediction so strange. It's not about forecasting a specific event. It's about how The Simpsons captured a global tendency to dramatize discipline, exaggerate consequences, and turn justice into a spectacle. The episode takes this impulse and pushes it to comedic extremes, but the core discussion still exists today. So, no, Australia won't be lining kids up for a ceremonial kick anytime soon. But the ongoing debate about how to handle misbehavior and how far punishments should go makes this prediction feel less like a random gag and more like satire aimed at a topic that keeps resurfacing. Debates about tradition don't stop there, which takes us to number 6, Big Ben turning digital. In the 1995 episode, Lisa's Wedding, we jump forward in time and see Lisa as an adult in a world filled with small tech upgrades. Some of those ideas came true later, including video calls, smart devices, and wearable tech. But one joke stood out more than the rest. When Lisa visits England, the camera shows London with a sight that feels off. Big Ben doesn't have its classic clock face. Instead, it shows bright digital numbers that blink like a cheap digital watch. It looks wrong on purpose. The writers used it to make fun of the idea that modern updates could replace old landmarks and turn history into something too practical. The odd thing is how often this joke returns in real life. Over the years, fake news stories and April Fool's posts claimed Big Ben was getting a digital screen for the modern age. Enough people believed it that newspapers had to clarify it wasn't true. Some people felt the idea insulted the building's history. Others said younger people struggle to read analog clocks, so a digital display might help them. Some schools already removed analog clocks from exam halls because students found them confusing. Digital displays fill phones, computers, cars, and public spaces. In a world built on speed and simple design, the idea of a digital Big Ben starts to feel like a real debate rather than a cartoon gag. Would London ever approve a change like that? Almost certainly not. Big Ben's value comes from its original look. Still, cities deal with arguments like this all the time. Renovation plans and lighting changes often spark long debates about what should stay and what can change. So while a true digital conversion is unlikely, the idea behind it isn't far-fetched. People feel torn between keeping history intact and making things easier to read or maintain. As this tension grows, even famous landmarks face unexpected proposals. Big Ben won't switch to glowing numbers anytime soon, but the question it raises, how much modernization people will accept, matters more each year. That brings us to prediction number 5, a major environmental disaster. When The Simpsons movie came out in 2007, its main plot focused on an environmental disaster so extreme and chaotic that most viewers treated it as a joke. Springfield's lake turns into a toxic mix after years of careless dumping and shortcuts. Officials finally start cleaning it, but Homer ruins the effort by throwing a silo full of pig waste into the water. The contamination becomes so severe that the government traps the entire town under a giant dome. The setup looks absurd, but the warning behind it feels real. A single environmental failure that grows beyond control isn't rare anymore. Rivers have caught fire, major coastlines have seen dangerous pollution spikes, and lakes have collapsed due to algae, toxins, and industrial waste. What used to feel like cartoon exaggeration now shows up in news reports. A giant dome covering a city will never happen, but the fear behind the idea still matters. What happens when a disaster grows faster than the systems built to stop it? Scientists have said for years that environmental damage can escalate once certain limits are crossed. In some places, pollution spreads faster than teams can contain it, leading to drastic and expensive solutions. Climate-related crises have become more common, and they cause more damage now than in past decades. Heat waves, chemical spills, wildfires, and failing ecosystems force officials to make tough choices. The dome in the movie works as a symbol for these kinds of interventions. Steps that seem strange or severe, but aim to protect the public when nothing else works. By 2026, we won't see Springfield-style containment, but the chance of a major environmental event that needs bold action is much higher than it was when the movie released. The detail that makes this prediction feel unsettling is how simple the cause was. The movie didn't use aliens or sci-fi tech. It showed plain negligence, careless actions building up over time. Real environmental crises often start the same way, slow, unnoticed, until the damage becomes too big to ignore. Concerns like these highlight how easy it is to miss threats that grow in the background. And that takes us to number 4, the message behind Yvan Eht Nioj. In the 2001 episode, New Kids on the Blech, Bart stumbles into the world of manufactured pop music and overnight fame. He joins a boy band called Party Posse, a group built not on talent, but on clever marketing and cutting-edge technology, meant to hide their total lack of singing ability. Their first music video looks like standard early 2000s pop chaos, flashy visuals, synchronized dancing, and a beat designed to lodge itself in your head. But then comes the strange part. A chorus of voices chants the phrase Yvan Eht Nioj.
Yvan Eht Nioj, Yvan Eht Nioj.
At first it sounds like nonsense, just another surreal joke. But Lisa, being Lisa, listens closely and realizes the phrase reverse spells join the Navy. Suddenly the episode shifts from simple comedy to a tongue-in-cheek commentary about hidden persuasion, media influence, and how easily entertainment can mask deeper agendas. While the episode exaggerates the concept for laughs, the core idea isn't entirely imaginary. Over the years, advertising experts, psychologists, and regulators have debated the boundaries of influence, how messaging, rhythms, symbols, and repeated patterns can sway people without them noticing. Some countries restrict or outright forbid subliminal techniques in ads. Even in places where it's allowed, the topic sparks concern because it bypasses conscious choice. The Simpsons takes that concern and pushes it to an absurd extreme, a government using boy bands to steer young audiences toward enlistment. But if you strip away the comedy and look at the skeleton of the idea, it echoes real patterns. Music has long been used to inspire, persuade, and shape public mood. Youth culture especially responds strongly to catchy messaging wrapped in entertainment. Modern algorithms amplify this even further. Songs, trends, and repeated phrases can spread worldwide in hours. A message doesn't need to be hidden backward to influence someone. It just needs to be memorable, catchy, and pushed across enough screens. By 2026, with technology advancing faster than regulations can keep up, we're likely to see more conversations about how subtle or not so subtle digital influence works. That's what makes Yvan Eht Nioj oddly relevant today. The show wasn't predicting mind control. It was poking fun at our willingness to be guided by entertainment, trends, and messaging we barely notice. The phrase became a meme, but the idea behind it, a world where influence hides inside the things we enjoy, feels increasingly familiar. Which leads us to prediction number 3, robots acting on their own. In the 1994 episode, Itchy and Scratchy Land, the Simpson family visits a theme park filled with robot mascots designed to entertain guests. Everything looks harmless until one simple mistake. Someone takes a photo using a camera flash. The light hits a robot's sensors the wrong way, and its behavior shifts from cheerful to aggressive. One glitch spreads to others, and suddenly the park becomes a dangerous maze of machines that no longer follow commands. What starts as a joke about malfunctioning attractions becomes one of the show's most striking future scenarios, robots turning against the people who built them. Back then, the idea felt like cartoon fantasy. Robots were clunky, slow, and found mostly in factories. The thought of them acting on their own, or coordinating in any threatening way, sounded like pure fiction. But today, with rapid progress in robotics and machine learning systems, the episode's message hits differently. We're surrounded by smart devices that make decisions without us noticing. Cars brake automatically, drones fly pre-programmed routes, home assistants process speech and learn from behavior patterns. Even factory robots now adapt to changes in their environment instead of repeating one motion forever. The fear isn't that metal mascots will chase us through a theme park. It's that we're building machines that learn faster than we expect. When systems become more complex, mistakes become harder to predict. A small glitch in one piece of software can ripple across networks, creating failures no engineer intended. Experts warn that as robots gain more autonomy, strict safeguards are needed to ensure that a minor fault doesn't escalate. By 2026, robots won't be leading uprisings, but they will hold far more responsibility in daily life. Automated delivery units, hospital helpers, home care devices, and industrial robots will operate in busy environments with less human oversight. That's why this Simpsons gag still gets attention. It exaggerates the scenario for comedy, yet highlights a real concern. Once machines become capable of independent action, even the smallest design flaw can turn into a serious problem. The episode acts as a playful warning about depending too heavily on technology without clear limits and safety rules. So while a robot takeover won't happen anytime soon, the idea of machines behaving unpredictably is no longer fiction. It's a real challenge developers and policymakers are racing to handle. As technology grows more independent, public life becomes harder to predict as well. That takes us to prediction numbers 2. Ivanka Trump running in 2028. In the 2016 Treehouse of Horror 27 episode, Homer wanders around on Halloween dressed as a rough, homemade version of Bender from Futurama. During the scene, he points to a sticker on his outfit that reads Ivanka 2028.
Because in America, everything's way too early. See?
It's a tiny gag, almost easy to miss, but it instantly became one of those oddly specific political nods that The Simpsons is famous for. The show had already surprised viewers by hinting at Donald Trump holding office years before it happened.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
So another Trump-related reference drew attention fast. The joke works because it plays on a simple idea. Political families often remain in the spotlight long after one member leaves. Ivanka Trump already held a high-profile advisory role during Donald Trump's time in office, placing her in countless political discussions and global meetings. Even if she never planned to run for anything, her visibility alone was enough for The Simpsons to poke fun at the idea of another Trump campaign decades later. What keeps this prediction alive is how unpredictable American politics has become. Public figures once seen as celebrities or business leaders sometimes shift into political roles without following traditional pathways. The Simpsons use this trend as fuel for satire, but it mirrors a real pattern across modern politics. As of now, Ivanka has made no formal announcement about 2028 or any future election. She stepped back from political involvement after leaving Washington, focusing instead on private life. But stepping back doesn't erase public curiosity. Whether Ivanka ever chooses to pursue a campaign or not, the joke continues to spark debates. Some viewers treat it as another case of The Simpsons making an oddly accurate prediction. Others see it as a commentary on how quickly politics can shift, sometimes rewarding fame over experience. Either way, the sticker from that Halloween segment keeps reappearing online anytime political conversations heat up. By 2026, the early stages of the 2028 election cycle will be underway. Rumors, trial balloons, and early positioning often begin 2 years before a presidential race. That means if Ivanka ever intends to step back into public life, the window where that decision would surface is approaching. The probability remains uncertain, but the timing lines up closely with when speculation typically begins. So while the original joke was meant to be lighthearted and exaggerated, it remains one of the most discussed future references from the show. The Simpsons didn't claim it would happen. It simply highlighted how politics sometimes repeats itself, and with politics becoming harder to forecast, we end on a prediction driven by pure imagination and real engineering progress. Number 1. Hover cars. In the 1992 episode, Itchy and Scratchy the Movie, a frustrated Homer tries to teach Bart a lesson by refusing to let him watch the long-awaited cartoon film. The story jumps forward decades into the future, showing an older Homer and Bart finally heading to the theater. During this short scene, a background shot reveals something striking: a person casually piloting a hover car, a vehicle floating above the ground as if wheels no longer mattered. In the early 90s, this sight was pure science fiction, the kind of idea reserved for comic books and futuristic cartoons. The concept had appeared in magazines and motor shows, but always as a faraway dream with little supporting technology. The Simpsons used it as a simple visual cue to say, look how far society has advanced. No one watching expected it to match real progress anytime soon. But today, that once impossible vision feels much less far-fetched. Engineers and transportation companies have spent years working on new methods of travel that break away from traditional road vehicles. Electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, magnetic lift platforms, drone-based transport units, and even small personal flyers have moved from lab experiments into early-stage testing. They still look nothing like the cartoon version, but the underlying idea, a vehicle that rises above the pavement, is actively being developed. Some prototypes already lift off the ground by using focused air pressure, rotating blades, or magnetic fields. Others aim to blend aircraft design with car-like controls so that ordinary users could operate them safely. The main challenges aren't imagination, they're laws, safety systems, energy efficiency, and infrastructure. Cities aren't yet built to support sky-level traffic, landing platforms, or charging systems for airborne travel. Still, progress keeps accelerating. By 2026, we might not see hover cars sold at dealerships, but we may see more advanced prototypes, early consumer demonstrations, or pilot programs in select regions. Governments and private companies are already studying how to regulate new flying vehicles, which shows how seriously the concept is being considered. What makes the Simpsons reference stand out is how casual it appears in the future world. The car isn't a luxury item or a dramatic reveal. It's simply part of daily life. That's the real dream behind hover vehicles. Transportation that frees people from congested roads and offers a new sense of movement. The episode shows that moment as normal, effortless, and even a little funny. If engineers solve the remaining obstacles, hover-type travel may become as familiar as electric cars are today. It will take time, planning, and countless tests, but the shift toward alternative transport is already underway. The cartoon scene wasn't predicting a specific model. It was hinting at a future where travel looks entirely different from the world we know now. Whether these predictions happen or stay as jokes, The Simpsons has a way of showing the world before it changes. Some ideas seem wild, others feel possible, and a few look closer than ever. As we move toward 2026, how do you feel about it? Excited, worried, or something else? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next video. Thanks for watching.